In the two preceding chapters of our exploration of ministry with the aging, sick, and dying, we explored history, tradition, and philosophies of the end of life. Now, in our final installment, let's look at how we put all this knowledge into action through examples, resources, and the essential characteristics of a pastoral minister. How do we do it? How do we walk down the hall of an institution not knowing what awaits us on the other side of the door? How do we know we will be received and be able to provide this needed spiritual comfort? First, we must remember that we have been called to this ministry by God. He who calls us to serve will empower us to do so. Here are some examples. Sister Regina Gallo of the Sisters of the Providence of St. Mary of the Woods explains her calling and addresses both ministers and families as she reflects upon her own work with the aging, sick, and dying.
It is the most profound ministry I've been in. It's just a blessing and a privilege to walk with, to journey with not only the individual that's dying, but the family as well. And in some instances, the family winds up needing me a little bit more than the patient, so to say. The experiences that I have and what I am able to witness as a person is kind of going from this life form to the next realm is the most profound thing.
Another example of dedication to the ministry of the sick comes from the late Monsignor Anthony Mara of the Diocese of Scranton. Even in his own failing health, he continued to minister to those he called his people. In late 2019, I had the opportunity to interview his sister Angie, who shared a touching story.
I have to tell you the story about when he went to the hospital because he loved to visit the sick people. He called me up one day and he said to me, he said, he said, I have to go visit people in the hospital, my people, he said. But my legs are bothering me today. I said, well, don't go. If your legs are bothering you, you don't have to go. He said, I'll see. Hours later, he called me up. He said, I went to visit, and I visited the hospitals in the city. All my people, he said. I said, how did you do that? And he said, I went to the desk, and he said, and I said, could you supply me with a wheelchair and have somebody push me around to see my people? And they did. He said, I went to see all my people in the hospital.
Following these fine examples, we the laity must know that Holy Mother Church has prepared us for our ministry. She's even given us publications like Pastoral Care of the Sick. The worn-out copy I've had since it was given to me by Father Bob Simon in 2011 stays in my car at all times. The rites in this and other books arm us for battle against depression, anguish, and suffering. Another book of great use is Handbook for Ministers of Care by Marilyn Koffler and Kevin O'Connor. In it, the authors remind us to maintain the essential elements of pastoral care. Fundamental skills. Be punctual. Do what you promise to do for a patient and his or her family. Be credible. Now, a priest, a deacon, a religious, even a member of a secular order has a certain built-in visible credibility, whether it's warranted or not. However, one should not rely on the Roman collar or habit alone. Being communicative and understanding goes a long way to building credibility with the patient and the patient's family. Smile, personality, and appropriate dress work wonders in comforting people. Taking care of how one appears externally and internally is a key part of ministry to the sick. As ministers, we must learn to listen and seek to understand. These actions of responsiveness and compassion go a long way toward building credibility and bringing comfort to a patient. Finally, just be present. The real presence of God, of Christ, in another human person is comforting. In addition, presence begets ministry. I'll leave you with this story from my personal experience. Many years ago, I brought communion to my now deceased grandfather when he was in the intensive care unit in a Scranton hospital. As a secular Franciscan, I was wearing my tau cross around my neck. It's our order's habit. As I stood with my family, a woman entered our little room and asked if I was a priest. I quickly said no. She then asked if I was carrying the Eucharist, and I told her that I was. She went on to explain that neither she nor her family had been to Mass or received communion in some time because they had been at the bedside of her husband, waiting for him to awake from a coma. A little earlier, while I was there with the Holy Eucharist, with the physical presence of Christ, that man woke up from his coma. I had the privilege of giving communion not only to that woman and her family, but particularly to her husband, the first communion he received after waking up from a coma. Not long after, I had the privilege of giving my grandfather his last Eucharist. God places us where he needs us. Be aware, be ready, and be present. I'm John Baldino, and this is Ministry to the Aging, Sick, and Dying.